Welcome to Threads of Sustainability, where you get to hear the passionate, informative, and engaging conversations of creatives, makers, manufacturers, and producers from all over the globe. We explore what sustainability can look like in the quilting, fiber, and textile world, and I'm your host, Bridget O'Flaherty, also known as the Sustainable Quilter. Welcome to another episode of Threads of Sustainability. I am your host, Bridget O'Flaherty. This week, I've got another fantastic conversation with a recycling textile artist, and that is Crispina Ffrench. And she has been working in this industry since the 80s. She started working her way through school and then ended up developing a large business with over 40 people working for her. And she really was in this world of textile upcycling, and it was at a time when it was very difficult to try and source materials and figure out how to get her materials, but she was very, very committed to upcycling and really had a very successful business run out of this idea and this concept of what she was doing. So we had this really great conversation, and she just ran a Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Business Summit, had a whole bunch of fantastic people on as panelists and guests talking to a huge group of people who are interested in upcycling and textiles. So we had a conversation about the review and wrap up of that summit, and just had a great chance to have a conversation around textiles and upcycling and sustainability and all of the things that I love to talk about. And I now have a new friend in my world. I hope you enjoy our conversation. It was really, really great to chat with her, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Crispina Ffrench, welcome to Threads of Sustainability.
I'm really glad to be here, Bridget. Thanks for inviting me to join you.
Yeah, no, I've been following you on Instagram was, I think, where I found you originally, and watching what you're doing because you've got this great big vision of all these different things you do around upcycling textiles. And then you launched this summit, which just blew my mind. And I wanted to know more about all of that. And we decided to wait until the summit was done so we could have some conversations around that summit and some of the stuff you did.
Yeah, oh man, I'll tell you, it's like my happy place. I feel like I found what I love the most. I mean, it's funny. I had, I started textile upcycling in 1987, which, people thought I was a little crazy. I started a business and I made blankets and clothing out of, mostly at the time I was using thrift store wool sweaters. And, here I am. I can't even do the math that fast, but that was 1987. I know that it's been like 35 years, I think, later, which I can't really wrap my head around because I feel like I am 35. But yeah, so the Rags to Riches Summit is, we just closed our second annual event, and it was awesome. I'm so glad you were able to participate and, get a little peek into that life and see what that was all about.
Yeah, no, I jumped in for a few of the sessions, and I was able to watch the recordings. I couldn't watch it the live times, but some really, really interesting guests. I want to dig into all about the summit, but I want to first kind of go a little bit more into your background. And you said you started in 1987. Were you like 12? Like, how old were you?
Not too far off, actually. It's kind of funny. I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh. I was 19 and I was I went to Mass Art in Boston, which is a 4-year art school. And this is the down and dirty story. That the truth is, I really wanted to go to RISD, which is Rhode Island School of Design. And it was pretty pricey at the time. And my parents were just like, no, you can't go there. It's too much money. Yeah, I know you applied. I know you got accepted, but you're not going there. You have to go to this other school because it's way cheaper. And I was just like, kind of offended, kind of like, wow, so you had me apply, whatever. Like, I just was offended. I was a kid. I was like, whatever. And I kind of like in my head just kind of flipped them off and was like, I don't ever want another dime from you. And I moved to Boston and I went to Mass Art, and they paid for my first year of school. And then I just decided that I really didn't need their money. I was like cool with, I applied for all kinds of, at the time they had what we call Pell Grants in the States. And I actually got paid to go to school. I had enough scholarship money that paid my tuition, and I had a little bit of leftover for like living expenses. And I was working to pay for like actual living expenses. And I was working a lot. I was working 3 jobs and, part-time stuff. And then also going to school. And I started making we had a workshop. This artist came to do like a felting workshop, making felt from like sheep fleece. And the assignment was to make a piece of felt and then make a piece of art from the felt. And I love the texture of the felt. I loved how the wool was like this kind of magical thing that kind of turned from this one texture into something so different, just with process of water and soap and rolling and pressure. And so I made it was a marionette actually. And it was like a dinosaur kind of rhino shaped thing. And I made it and people really responded to it. They liked it a bunch. And so I thought I'll make some more of those. And I made few more of them, and people bought that. They wanted to buy them from me. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I realized that I hated making felt. Like it was February in Boston and it was cold and the building I was in was freezing. And I'm always kind of cold anyway. And I'd be up to my elbows in like cold soapy water in February in Boston. And I was riding my bike everywhere and my sleeves would get wet and I'd just be like uncomfortable. So I was home one weekend visiting my folks, and they were both artists. And my dad said to me, you could probably get that texture that you're making that felt from, you could probably just throw some sweaters in the wash machine and dry her. And I was like, what? I'm like, he's like, yeah, just go to the Goodwill and buy. And I was like, let's go right now. And we went to the Goodwill and we bought my dad was like, even though I got upset with him about the financial part of things, he was like one of my best friends. And and I went to the Goodwill and we bought like armloads of wool sweaters that were every size. We were just looking at color and pattern. And I mean, you can just say the rest is history. From that moment forward, I never made another piece of felt. And I guess I made a whole lot of other pieces of felt, but just with a completely different process. So I started selling my work at a little craft store cooperative in Cambridge, Mass. And it was really super cool because it was a cooperative. So there were 70 craftspeople represented in this place. And I was like their little sister. I was like this kid going to college, and they were all like taking me right under their wing and like going, oh, this is how you do that. Like I didn't know anything. I was an art student raised by artists. Like, business was definitely something I was really not, so I had any exposure to at all. And they had a lot of exposure to it. And they were so excited to share that with me. And I stay in touch with some of those people even to this day. So that's how it all started. And I could talk for days about my business. I've had a really.
So tell me about some of those early days. You had a specific product that you started making, right?
Yeah. And I actually wish I had one within reach of where I'm sitting right now, but that little marionette / rhino thing turned into what I call ragamuffins. And there were dinosaur shaped I couldn't use the word toy. That's something I learned quickly, is like, if it's a toy, there's all sorts of regulations around it. So they were soft sculptures that a lot of people had their children enjoy. And they were all made out of felted wool sweaters. And this was long before polar fleece. This was like everybody wore wool and threw it in got mad at their husbands for washing it in the washing machine. And I loved those husbands. I was like, keep doing that, because I had the supply of pretty unwearable material that I was harvesting first from the thrift stream. And then, I had 3 different styles that I did for a long time. And I graduated college with no debt and only one job, which was making ragamuffins. And my mom said to me, about halfway through my senior year, everybody started running around trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do with this art degree? And, putting together, remember those little slides with the cardboard frames? Are you that? Yeah. That's how old I am. Okay. Like, people were putting these like tiny little slides. You had to put them in these little machines and like look at them and like,
yeah,
that's what they were doing. And I was like sitting on my couch, having tea and stitching ragamuffins. And my mom just said to me, why don't you just keep doing it? Like, you've got something good going on. I didn't even know I had a business. I just was making ragamuffins and selling them, and had been for, at that point, a couple of years. So she encouraged me to apply to the American Craft Council shows that they had. There was one, like, I grew up in Massachusetts and my parents lived like in Western Mass. And there was one of the shows they did, the American Craft Council hosted a pretty good sized wholesale show in a place called West Springfield, Massachusetts, which is like an hour from where I grew up. So I applied and I got accepted, and I went trundling off to I took a few days off from my waitress job, and I was like, hey, I've got to go do this show. And I like wrote like $30,000 worth of business. And I went home and I went to my boss and I'm like, you guys, I got to quit. It's like, I know it's June. I know the busy season is like 2 weeks from now, but I can't, I don't. And they were so encouraging and kind and lovely. And they just like, I was working at a restaurant in this kind of famous sort of old New England inn called the Red Lion Inn in the town I grew up in, Stockbridge, Massachusetts. And the people who I worked for just said, hey, if you ever have any questions, if you ever need help with anything, just let us know. And I let them know. I had a lot of questions, but that was just like it just kind of took off. Like it wasn't like a conscious thing where I was like, oh, I'm going to design a business. It was just like,
no,
I wanted to buy stuff and
happened around your hobby.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. That's just what happened. Yeah.
That's super cool. Talk to me a little bit about those early days then of that business and how, like, so you decided you knew you were going to be doing upcycling. That was something that was feeding what you were doing in terms of your product. And so how did you navigate getting materials?
Well, that's a really good question, Bridget. It was initially, it was me and my dad down at the Goodwill, right? And my parents, like I said, lived in this pretty rural area, and I was in Boston, so I was able to kind of shop both ends of the state and find the materials that I needed. But pretty quickly, that was not possible anymore. Like it was after I graduated from college when it became impossible to source enough material for the demand. And through a very circuitous and kind of funny route, I found a place that was actually located in Boston and in Cambridge, actually. And it's cool to circle back to the summit. The guy who owns that business actually just presented at the summit.
Cool. So tell me about him.
Chris Castle. He's he at the time when I first discovered his business, he worked there. We're the same age, and he was just like the kid who worked there. And the guy who ran the place, his name was Bruce Cohen, and he was a really eccentric, knowledgeable, amazing person who taught me a lot about the wholesale used clothing industry. And I would go to his place. It's called the Garment District. That's the name. It's actually a store, not a district, which they have on their website. So I imagine they get asked that question a lot. But at the time when Bruce ran it, it was wholesale retail. So right now it's really focused on their store and their retail establishment. But Bruce did a lot of business with like the wiping rag business and more like volume, sort of less quality thrift.
What does that mean?
So the used textile industry, it's sort of foul. Back in the day, back like 150 years ago, there was people called ragmen, and they would ride around on carts with horses. And if you had like old textiles that you were getting rid of, you could give them to the ragman, and he would take it and do whatever, like turn it. If it was old shirts, they would maybe make rags from them, or maybe they would take them to the people who manufactured paper, who were, a lot of the cotton went to the paper industry. And like, there was all places where they kind of disseminated where the rags went. And over time, those people that with the horse and cart turned into like Bruce's grandfather, who then, I have now this material available to me. How can I create a business that's going to serve me better? And so Bruce, his grandfather, had a place in Cambridge that was like a warehouse, and they would bring all these materials together and sort them for different reasons, right? So like cotton is a good example. Like that would go to the paper industry, or maybe they would use it for other things. I don't really know too much about cotton, but like wool got used for insulation and for different, they make all sorts of interesting things from wool because it's self-extinguishing. So there was, the liners of car hoods that look like black cardboard are actually made out of wool. I don't know if that's still the case.
Too, right? Shoddy is used in
shoddy. Yeah. Shoddy is actually the sort of like a downcycle product from the textile waste stream. And that's used for like stuffing upholstery. It's like a stuffing textured material that's all old clothing that's shredded, and it's created and used for lots of different things, actually, like on the inside of like boots in the wintertime, like snowmobile boots, that those liners that are like that navy blue kind of squishy stuff, that was also created from the waste stream of old clothing. So there's a lot of things that we use every day that we don't necessarily equate to being like textile recycled. But so Bruce, he had this huge sorting facility. So they would have these big bales, and their bales are like say they're 3 by 3 by 6 feet. So they're big, like chunks of fabric, and they're clothing, and they're made in a giant baler that's like a compression machine that's huge and kind of dangerous. And like they're wrapped in big wires, and they are shipped that way to whatever entity needs that particular material. And those people are sometimes referred to as garment graders, or the garment graders are the people who sell the wholesale clothing. And back in the 80s and 90s, when I was doing a lot of buying from these people into the 2000s as well, there was garment graders in any city, like, medium size to large size city, you'd find, handfuls of garment graders. And that has actually changed pretty substantially since then, where kind of like a lot of business, I feel like, has transitioned from that kind of family run mom and pop situation to, the Best Buy, the target. So like there are much larger volume businesses that are fewer and farther between. And most of those businesses service much larger accounts. So it's not as easy to say, hey, I need 2 bales of wool knits. It's more like you got to get a trailer truckload, and, you have to commit to like huge volume, or source your things in some other way where you're actually shopping the Goodwill outlets or whatever. Like there's different ways to source things now than there were then. But it's just a really interesting industry that's really hard to break into, especially as a 19-year-old female. People did not take me seriously, but Bruce did. And he kind of introduced me to people, and with his introduction, other people took me seriously. And it was without Bruce, I don't really know if I would have been able to develop my business the way that I did. And yeah, so Chris, the guy that presented at the summit, now owns the garment district, and he has transitioned the business to serve him better. So he does a lot of volume out of their beautiful, like a most amazing. It's really like, is it thrift? Is it vintage? It kind of rides the fine line between those two, where you find really cool, amazing stuff there that is, not really so expensive, but really, I mean, there's everything there. And he still does by the pound. So people can go there. I think he said on Saturdays, people can go and buy clothing by the pound.
That's super cool. And so tell me about a few of the other guests. Like what was a highlight for you in terms of the guests on the summit?
Oof, the highlight, the highlight for me about the whole summit is that there are so many really amazing, creative entrepreneurs who are tapping into a stream of value that I think was overlooked for a very long time. And, back in 1987, I joke and say people thought I was crazy, but they really did. Like people thought that like, you're making baby blankets out of garbage. Like, you want me to put my baby next to that? Like, is it clean? Like, and I would just, I have, I guess I'm a real opportunist. So I saw that, those questions as being an opportunity to formulate a very kind and clear and maybe a little funny, gentle education campaign of teaching people why it is an important thing to consider an alternative to what is traditionally available as far as like baby stuff goes. Is it plastic? Is it made in this country? Is it, what are you actually looking for to parent your children with? I mean, that's an example. These toys are handmade out of natural fiber in this country by me and the people who I employ. And this other toy that you might not realize is made by people who are underpaid in a country far away, and it's plastic, and oh, later they realize that this is actually really poisonous. Like, so
It doesn't have durability. Like you're going to be throwing it out in no time.
yeah. And all of those things just kind of gave me an opportunity to, build myself a little soapbox that was kind of like I'm not going to wave my arms around and scream. I'm just going to show you that this is kind of cool. And if you give me a minute, you might think it's really kind of cool too.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. And so the summit was able to kind of bring all of that together for you.
Yeah. And I feel like, I think, and I feel like, over the years in running my business, and I bet that you might have experienced this in your business too, Bridget, like there's really not a place like, well, actually, we were talking before we started recording about quilting guilds, right? Like if you're a quilter and you want to join a guild, like they're available. I'm imagining like, right. They're kind of like in pretty much any place you can find a quilting guild or people who quilt, right? But when you make ragamuffins out of sweaters, they don't have guilds for that. Like, they just don't. And there's not a lot of information available. Like there's about textile upcycling that's not industrial, that's more like creative reuse, rethinking how, people who don't know, Bruce, how do they source material? It's a conundrum for a lot of people. So I always wished that I had an organization or a place to look for support, people who would understand the intricacies that are specific to upcycled business, right? There's a lot of differences. You can't go buy the same fabric if you want to make 3 of the same blankets. You got to source it, you got to color match it. It's just different. So I could never find that place. And I just thought, well, I think this is an opportunity. And I love to promote sustainable living practices and creativity. And I really don't go with the doom and gloom thing. Like I don't think people who feel guilty about being people are ever going to lend a hand to making things better. So I just kind of decided that, because I've been doing this such a long time, I get bored with one trajectory. I always need to kind of jazz things up for myself a little bit. And this just just opened up for me. Like actually it was during the pandemic when I realized how much people kind of needed each other and didn't really have a platform. And it just it was just something that I was like, I'm going to just try it out. Over the years, I've made a ton of connections with lots of different interesting people. And I feel like all of those people have such value to share that I wanted to bring them into the spotlight and have them be able to share their knowledge that's so valuable for our whole planet, really. So
tell me a little bit about those different people. Like how many different people did you have talking?
We had 36 presenters this year. We had people from from the supply chain, from Chris Castle from his business where he doesn't do a lot of wholesale selling, but he's really connected with people who do. So we were able to kind of pair him with people who are looking for, that kind of volume material, accessibility. And then we had people who are, solopreneurs who are really more art facing than business facing. Thinking about Lou Mason's rugs and Chris English, who are both just making really beautiful art pieces. Chris English is a quilter from actually the UK. They're both from the UK, oddly enough, but Lou Mason is a rug maker, and they're just making really beautiful one-off pieces that they make all by themselves, and they're really not interested in doing more production. And then everything kind of in between, Rancherage. Erin Beatty was with us, and she has a pretty good size production company making clothing. She's just launching her home collection this summer. And, I feel like it's really important to represent all the different, well, you can't really ever represent all the different facets, but to have a really varied representation of what, building your life around a business that is textile upcycling looks like. And, there's so many different ways that can look.
Yeah, well, and I think that was one of the reasons I was so interested in it in the first place, was because it's kind of presenting these different lenses, not just around upcycling, but around what sustainability can look like, right? It's not just about the upcycling is absolutely an imperative part of sustainability, but so is the artist, so is the producer, so is the business people who support all of those other businesses, like we need to have a sustainable economy as well. So we need to know how to manage our businesses and how to manage our money, and understand what that exchange might be, and what that, like, economies can look different, right? They're not
so different.
all
Yeah.
financial. And so having that representation of those different lenses of what sustainability can be, it's not really, I don't think it's only about the upcycling piece, even though that was the focus of your summit, obviously.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I have to say, yeah, I think that's really a valid thing to consider. And I think it's also, there are so many pieces that fall into it. And I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding. Like when I was running, I ran a production company. I employed 40 people for 22 years, making product for 350 stores all around the world. And how many people told me that what I was doing was just not possible. You can't do that and make money. You can't, and just dismissive. Right. And actually, yeah, I can. It actually, I did. And, I feel like because there's a lack of understanding in the sort of traditional business trajectory, which I do think is changing, because there's you can now go to college, you can go to like fashion design school and focus on recycled, upcycled, reuse materials and get a degree, which is so exciting and amazing. So there's an understanding that is building. But I think that for people who are, either, newer to it than I am, which I have to say most people are, to see that it actually does work, and that it's not only possible, but really fun and can actually lead to a kind of beautiful life. I feel like it's really important to represent that, and to be, to not, to sort of balance out the dismissiveness that's kind of standard, and without any, I don't think malice is intended. I think people are trying to be supportive and encouraging without realizing that what they're doing is actually not that way sometimes, for people who are coming at business with an alternative slant.
Yeah, I had I had a discussion with my father back in my 20s when I was deciding that I wanted to do textile art as my livelihood. He said, "You can't make a living doing that." And I looked at him and I said, "I already am."
Yeah.
"What do you mean? I've been doing it for years. I already am." And "Well, you can't make a living."
Yeah, I think that's so common. And, having gone to art school, and the thing is so interesting, like, right, my parents were both artists. So they didn't say that to me. They were encouraging me to go to art school. They were both my high school art teachers, which I just thought meant that the only reason that I was good at art is because they were the people grading my artwork. I had a really big struggle getting through high school. I really was not engaged, and I did not enjoy high school. I loved the party aspect. That was really fun. But, the grade part, not so much. And, when I went school, I met a lot of people who had more similar experience to you, where people were like, "Oh, you're going to what are you going to do with that degree? Come on." Like, ridiculous. Like, pfft. And then seeing that and feeling like, wow, that's so unfair. Like, how these people are so talented. They got into the school, they're doing beautiful things, they're making strides in the world. And then I think that I was kind of drawn to that, because that's also what I experienced in the world of business, is people also having that kind of dismissiveness to their approach of my business. And I thought, I don't want to do that to you, and business guy telling me I can't do this. I want you to see how I can do this, so that you don't dismiss the next person. And I think that is also something that carries through to the summit, where I want the people who are running their textile upcycling businesses to have a platform, but also for validity, to just be like, this is real. You have a real business. You're making real green money. You're paying your life. You're doing your thing. And no, it's not easy. It's not, anybody who runs a business knows that entrepreneurship is a big commitment, and it's really important to make that commitment fun and serve you and nurture you in a way that you feel like the hours and the tough parts are worth it, right? So that you want to keep doing it, because this is important work. This is stuff that, we're bringing to light for people to have an alternative, so that our planet can be healthy. It's not like, trivial. It's important. And I think some people don't realize that what they're doing is so important.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And it is an evident, it's evident in the work that you're doing, in the work that a bunch of other people that you had on your panel are doing already, that difference is being made. And it isn't just about the environmental better decision that doing upcycling might be, but it's also about the communities that are being created and the social context around that improved space, right? Like it's not, and I don't mean just financially. Like we're hopefully we are working with labor situations where we're hiring people and we're paying them well, and that is hopefully something that's happening, because traditionally textile labor was not paid well. So hopefully that's shifting with the way that we're starting to think now. But not only that, there's the space that we as individuals get into where our cups are full, like where we are feeling fulfilled in what we are doing. And that kind of exchange of economy is very, very valuable. And just having people who are healthy to be in the world, putting things out into the world and sharing that, I think that's a really, really important part around sustainability. So I don't know how you quantify that necessarily, but I think that's it's a nice, not just a nice side effect, but it is part and parcel from doing this kind of business.
Hey everyone, it's Bridget, the Sustainable Quilter. I wanted to let you know about the Green Stitchers Hive. It's our brand new online community. It's a welcoming space where we can connect, share knowledge and resources, and support each other in our journey towards sustainable textile practices, whatever that means to you: quilting, weaving, knitting, felting, anything. Inside the Hive, we have workshops, monthly challenges, live Q&A sessions, live lectures with guest speakers, and opportunities to connect with other like-minded people. You can access the Green Stitchers Hive on my website at bridgetoflaherty.com. Can't wait to see you there.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I say this a lot, and I it's like an infinite cycle of wins, right? Like there's so many pieces of textile upcycling that are nurturing, if it's to the planet, if it's to the maker, if it's to the employee, if it's to the person who gets to buy that one of a kind, one-off handmade thing. And then there's the other, speaking to the whole ethical treatment of people, like we forget that we are actually part of our environment. Like we're humans and we live on this planet, and so do the trees and the butterflies and the mushrooms and the fish and the frogs and whatever else. And like, if we see ourselves as that, and also see ourselves as having the ability to nurture what nurtures us, then we feel like we're part of a solution rather than part of the problem. And I think that people who feel like they're a solutionary feel important and worthy and happy and connected, right? And if it's sort of like, I think about this and see if you can follow my train of thought, but like for years as a kid, I was born in 1965, people thought women should be thin, right? Like that's what we were taught. You opened any magazine, 17 magazine comes to mind as a kid, flipping through, everybody was super skinny and they were all white and they all had pretty long hair. And if you didn't fit that model, you weren't desirable. And so a lot of people, myself included, because I've never been very skinny, walked around feeling like there was something wrong with them and they were doing something wrong. And when you feel like there's something wrong with you and you're doing something wrong, you're not happy or not like contributing away. There's so much of what you're spending all this time worried about what you look like and, how wide your calves are, when really what's important is what you just said: being connected, having a community, feeling like you're doing the right thing, feeling empowered and an important part of what's happening.
Feeling fulfilled.
Yeah. Feeling fulfilled and feeling like you are able to fulfill others, right? Like, so if we could all stop worrying about things that don't matter, things like, what cup size our bras are or whatever, then we could spend all that energy nurturing each other and our planet and having fun, which is what I think is really important. And I think that there's a lot of science that's gone into that feeling of like the idea of like human connection. And I think we learned this through the pandemic, like human connection, like talking to each other. It doesn't matter. It could be on Zoom, it could be on some platform, but like sharing like authentic conversation that might not be pretty all the time, and then fun. Those two things, like scientists are learning more and more every day that those two things that people might think are trivial or things that you get to do that are extra once you get all your work done. If you don't have those things, you really can't get your work done.
The idea of retirement, that's when we'll start to have fun. We'll do our work, keep our head down, and get to this stage where we can go out and have fun. Well, to me, that feels like we're missing the whole point of life. Like we've got this great big life available to us, and it's short. It's really, really, really short. And we have opportunity to live our best lives. And I know that sounds maybe contrived, but it really is. For me, that's where I come to all of what I'm doing, is that I have this short life. I've had a lot of trauma in my life and had a lot of loss. And I'm not about to let that hold me back from getting my best life and from loving what I'm doing and making connections and just supporting a life that feels sustainable in a way that is it's holistic. It's not just about one part waiting for another part. It's all of the parts. It's all of the environment, it's the people, it's how I'm feeling in all of it, it's how you're feeling in all of it. All of those connections are a huge part of having a sustainable life. And
Totally agree. I totally agree. I think it is. And I always say to people, like, textile upcycling is like the gateway to that, right? Like, it's very accessible. You can go to the thrift store, buy something for, $20 and a pair of scissors is really all you need to get started. And like, you might like it, you might not. And if you don't, that's cool. There's something else that you'll be drawn to. But if you like it and you want to get into it, there's no barrier, right? And then all of a sudden you're thinking about the clothing that you're throwing away because you're going to the thrift store to get that fabric. And like all of a sudden, all of these other pieces kind of sort of settle into place. And you're thinking about, oh, the car that you drive, and like, do you need to go there? And how, there's an awareness that opens, right? And it's like, it's not the place where things are desperate and panicked and holy crap. It's more like the place where you're like, oh, I have the power to make impact.
yeah.
Whew.
What else?
Oh my goodness. Right.
What else
like
can I do?
Exactly.
Those little things, small actions pivot, and they create these sort of ripples of waves. It's the beginning. When you're talking about people starting into textiles and maybe picking it up for the first time, I think there's something so incredibly ancient about textiles that's kind of in our bodies. Like when we touch a piece of fabric, when we walk into a thrift store or into a quilt store for that matter, touching a piece of fabric, it's just, I don't know, for me, it just awakens cells that I didn't know I needed to be awakening.
I think so too. I heard this really cool thing. I think it was somebody I was talking to a couple of weeks ago who said to me that 100 years ago, people spent as much time preparing food as they did preparing fabric.
Interesting.
Like people used to weave fabric so they could make clothes. Like 150 years ago, there certainly wasn't the thrift store. There probably was fabric available to purchase, but I think you had to be kind of rich to have that accessible. Is that crazy?
No, seems crazy. Yeah. Like in the quilt world, say we, because I'm in the quilt world, not because I have that ancestry, but in the quilt world, folks were upcycling feed sacks, right? And the companies that made the cotton for the feed sacks started making them out of patterns and calicos so that they could become clothing, so that the people who, usually the women who were making the clothing, would be attracted to those patterns and buying their flour sacks so that they could make their quilts or clothing out of that.
Yeah. That's such a cool thing. And like there's a situation where the flour company, or whatever was in the sacks, was creating an opportunity for people to upcycle that served, it was marketing. We're going to make this really cool pattern over here on this pack of flour because, Joe down the road who's got his sacks of flour, they're kind of boring. They're not the colors people are looking for. So it was like this way to kind of create a symbiosis that really served more than just the person, more than one person, regardless of who was like the initial kind of benefactor or benefitter. Super cool. And last year at the summit, which was our first year, we had one of the G's Bend quilters with us as a presenter. And she was speaking to that history and about how, for her growing up as a kid in Alabama, like they didn't have money. They just used what they had and created these quilts that have created like an international awareness, and like they have, fans all over the world who seek and collect G's Bend quilts. So cool that it was like, they are like, I feel like they're kind of the place where certainly North American textile upcycling, the first recognition of the oldest upcycling, I feel like is G's Bend. And it's kind of important to me to really look at that and look at the flour companies that were creating these sacks and like really acknowledge like that's a really cool thing. They did this so that people could reuse this fabric. How can we build that into what we're doing today? How can we, have things that we are, things that are for sale in packaging? How can that packaging become something else rather than that styrofoam chunk that's going to wind up in the landfill? There's so many opportunities.
My son just bought peanut butter. He's at the grocery store and he eats peanut butter, and he was looking through, because we talk about it's a regular conversation in our household. And he was trying to figure out what he wanted to buy. And he found this one that's all natural. It's not organic peanut butter, so we don't know what kind of pesticides went into the production of the peanuts, but it is a natural. There's nothing else in it. It's just peanuts and salt, and that's pretty much it. And it comes in this glass jar with a metal lid. So, and it's a big wide mouth jar that you can actually fit your hand right into. And we don't know what we're going to use it for, but it's like, I can't throw that. I don't want to actually put that in recycling, because that's actually a good vessel that I will use for something else. So
it's a perfect example. It's like, maybe you want a can in it. Maybe you want to, put your jam that you make this summer in that or whatever. And it's like, that's a perfect example of like a sick. And if the peanut butter company was really vested, or, maybe I should call the peanut butter company and tell them, but, it wouldn't be cool if it said, Bridget's son's favorite peanut butter on it. Like, so they would be like, oh, remember that, Mom? Like back in 2023 when we got that jar at the grocery store, remember that? And it would bring back like this memory where it's like this, then there's a story, right? And I think that that's another thing that textile upcycling, that's in that cycle of wins, that maybe gets sort of overlooked or not maybe acknowledged as much, as like there are stories with every single piece of textiles that have been upcycled. And, the story is, there's a lot of chapters. It's not just one thing, right? Like there's somebody designed that piece of clothing, if that's what you're using, if it's, if you're upcycling old clothing, somebody wore it, somebody sold it, somebody wore it, somebody donated it, somebody else bought it. Like there's all of these pieces that happen to this particular thing. And then it comes to the artist that might be the upcycler, and their job is to like add a chapter, right? So every time there's like this unfolding story that happens. And then the person who winds up wearing whatever that was, the artfully upcycled piece, that person has a story of the artist that made it and where they got it. And it's this kind of thing that adds a lot of value. You don't get that when you both go shopping on Shein.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And bone to pick with them, but we won't go into.
Yeah, we all do.
It's too big.
I got a couple.
Oh my goodness. And in a lot of those various different companies that are taking what's not theirs and using it in a way that is manipulative. It really bothers me.
We could probably do a series of episodes on fast fashion.
Oh, I think so. There's a lot of things to talk about around that. And not only fast fashion, in terms of production and what they're doing, but also, like, I was having a conversation the other night, on one of my, I did a talk on cotton, the history of cotton, and had a few folks come out for that. And we were having a conversation around textile upcycling and H&M. H&M has a textile upcycling program. And, I think the jury's still out on how impactful that actually is, and whether or not they're using it as a greenwashing tool to make themselves look like they're doing really great things in textile upcycling. But does anybody know what happens to the materials after it leaves their?
Yeah, they're not, I mean, it's anybody who's producing in that volume are not doing anything good for the environment. I'm sorry. I mean, great that they're trying to make it look that way, but they're really not. And the all of that is actually, I believe, and I am not a scientist and I don't do a whole lot of research, but I believe that if you're exploiting people to make clothing that's as cheap as you can possibly make it, that you're not doing anything good for the environment. And so I think that for the stories are really important. I think that's a good thing to think about. Like, just, the stories are important, and it just means that if there isn't a story, it's probably not really worthy of your time or attention. And, the other thing to consider when you're thinking about, textile upcycling versus a fresh new thing is that there's so many things to consider, but the thing that comes to mind is the quality of the fabric, right? Like, we are learning now about microplastics in our air and in our water and our soil, and they're in our bodies, because we wear plastic clothing. And if you wear plastic clothing, that's what will happen to it's just common sense. It's like, you put lotion on your body and it goes in your body. And if you put plastic clothing on your body, it does transfer inside of your body. And there's just not a lot of research that's available to talk about what that does to human bodies. It's starting to come out. It's starting to become more aware. And it's not, it's sort of like, when you're pregnant and people tell you all about how you're going to have your baby and you should do this, should do this, do that, do the other thing. This is how it's going to work the best. But really, what works the best is what works the best for you. And what works the best for me is that I just try to avoid wearing plastic clothing, because I don't think that that's going to help my body be healthy. But if, there's some people who, I don't know, people who need to have, some quality of that synthetic fiber clothing that is intrinsic to their job or to what they're comfortable doing. I'm thinking about people who practice yoga or whatever. Like, there's times where that's appropriate and it makes sense. But if we could limit it to just those times, I think that the planet would be healthier.
Oh, agreed. Yeah. And I think that, we could go in, there's another rabbit hole. I was just thinking about going down in terms of the consumption to begin with and what we think we need as a whole other conversation.
Yeah. I mean, circling back around to the Rags to Riches Summit, I think that one of the things, the gentle education piece that I started with back when I started my business has kind of flipped a little bit to a place where people are understanding that it's a viable alternative to look at upcycled things to purchase, right? Whether it's clothing or home goods, whatever, any kind of textile that's been upcycled is now, I feel like people have an awareness that there's something available and that it could be a cool thing for them. So I feel like the education piece is turning to that first purchase, right? So like if you want to upcycle something, it helps to have nice quality fabric to upcycle. And if everybody's buying crap from Shein, that's really poor quality, you're not going to be able to make a nice quality upcycled piece from something that didn't start out as being a good quality piece to start with. So think about it, think about how many pairs of jeans do you need? And do you want to go and buy a pair of jeans from a company that is super cool, doing amazing work, really thinking about how their jeans are manufactured in a really sustainable manner, that costs $200 that you only have to buy once for 10 years? Or do you want to buy the 4 pairs of jeans a year from some other company that doesn't really care too much about anything other than how much money they're making? it's actually less expensive to buy the $200 pair of jeans.
Absolutely.
It really is.
Yeah. Because the costs are not just the dollar values.
Exactly.
There's so many other things to consider in the costs.
So true. And I feel like, there's a lot of people in the world who have been trained and taught to believe that the $10 pair of leggings from Walmart is the way to go. And it's just because they've never been exposed and they don't have the knowledge they need to make really healthy decisions that are going to support them in the future. And I feel like we're in a place where people are beginning to question the whole idea of capitalism to start with, and like how it works and what it supports.
And the next generation it's exciting to see what they're talking about and what they're investigating and how they're approaching leadership and how they're approaching commodification. They're coming at it from a very different headspace. It's exciting. I've got a 22-year-old and a 27-year-old, and we have very interesting conversations, and they challenge me constantly with my own concepts around how commodification and capitalism should be. And I don't know that I want to say should be, but how I think it is, because I'm a part of it, whether I want to be or not, to some degree, and so they're just challenging me on some of the ways that I think, which is good.
I think, yeah, I find the same thing with my kids, and just like really thinking about, it kind of goes back to the thing we touched upon with like feeling, being female growing up in the 70s when, we were taught that, we weren't right. And that this is, you got to be like this way. And it's the same thing with our whole structure of like exchange, right? Capitalism is like, this is how it works. It just works this way. Well, it doesn't have to. There are alternatives. We could be creative and think of ways to support each other that might not have anything to do with transactions. So I think it is really exciting. And I'm really like interested and intrigued by the ideas that I'm hearing from the younger generation, and also, from people in our generation that are just thinking about ways of doing things differently. And I feel I have no idea where it's going. It's so exciting to kind of like just stand there and be like, okay, I'm here. I want to support what I think is right, and I'm open. But yeah, that's pretty cool. And that also, it just dovetails nicely with the whole sustainability piece, right? Like, having what you need and maybe not a whole lot more, because why?
Because why? Yeah. Maybe that's the questions we need to be asking. Do we need those things?
Yeah.
Thank you for this amazing conversation. It's been, I've liked this journey a lot. And tell us a little bit about how people can find you.
Oh, sure. My website is just my first name, which is Crispina, and it's crispina.eco. You can find me there. I also have a podcast called Rags to Riches podcast, and you can find that at ragstoRiches.eco. .eco is kind of a funny URL. Like, it's actually for people who are working in the sustainability sector, and it's you have to kind of apply and get accepted. So I'm really proud of those URLs, but both of those URLs you can also find with a .com, because sometimes people don't remember the .eco piece. And then the Rags to Riches Summit is an annual event. We'll be hosting that every year. And if you're listening to this podcast in 2023, when we're recording it, our next event will be April 4th, 5th, and 6th of 2024. So you can get on the mailing list for that if you're interested in staying up to date. And, come visit me on Instagram. I'm Crispina Ffrench at Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. You can find me in all those places, Pinterest. So
we'll put all those links into the notes as well, into the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Bridget. It was really fun to chat.
Yeah, no, it's been really good.
I feel so lucky to be able to talk to all of the different people that I get to interview through this podcast and through this medium, because I get to talk to people who are just as passionate as I am about sustainability, but they have all these different lenses to what it is that they're doing. And Crispina comes at this from this upcycling world, and she's been really heavily into that part of sustainability for a very long time now, and brings with her all this expertise and experience and knowledge. And I love that she wants to share it so much with people, and she is super generous with what she does know. And I don't know, that part of the community that is building around sustainability for me is just fantastic. And I hope you're enjoying that as well. And I look forward to talking to you again next time and sharing more stories with you. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to Threads of Sustainability. I really appreciate all the support that I've received over the last year. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can go over to my website and you can buy me a cuppa, and that helps keep the lights on here. You can also follow, and share the podcast with people that you know that might be interested. If you're interested in joining a community where we talk about all the different kinds of things around sustainability and share projects and share our journeys with each other, you can join the Green Stitchers Hive. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You can send me an email. I'd love to hear from you and hear what you think about the podcast. Have a great day.